Hey, and welcome back to this focus in the face-to-face track. Today, talking about the issue of attendance and participation. So depending on your discipline, you may or may not track attendance and participation in your class. There isn't a requirement to track attendance and participation in your class. It's totally up to you. Some faculty may teach in a discipline in which in-class process connected to attendance and participation may be a requirement. As an example, art and social sciences. So if you're in an art class, part of that class might be, we want to see how you actually physically work with the materials, and it's a practicum and it's a tutorial, and so you have to complete assignments in class, and thus it has to have attendance. You have to have attendance or participation in that class. Likewise, let's say in a poli-sci class, maybe part of the point is to lecture to the class and then do small group discussion. And if you don't do that, if you're not physically in class, you don't have the opportunity to learn that material. Now there could be another discipline, maybe in one of the sciences that isn't a lab science, where the instructors feel as if you're okay as long as you do well in the test, quizzes, or other assignments. Again, it's totally up to you. So the process of doing this involves a number of different basic physical things, and I could show you some of these that I've used in the past. So as an example, we can have name cards, and I do this often when I'm trying to learn names, plus I want to track attendance. I either use the smaller index cards or the either 3x5 or 4x6. I will actually run these through my printer, and then I'll have the name of the student and sometimes the class on there just as a note to me if the classes get mixed up. I try to use different color cards for different classes. In the past, if I were teaching 3 or 4 classes in a quarter, what I would try to do is have 3 or 4 different colors of cards. So all of my Anthro 102 would get purple, all of my Social 101 orange, Social 107 pink, Anthro 103 white, and so forth. And then I run these through the printer, and then what I do in class is, these all have names, and I typically fold them like a desk card. And then on the first day of class, it takes me sometimes doing this, maybe 3 or 4 class periods to get most of the names down, maybe sometimes more like 5 or 6, depending on the size of the class. But then I can put the card down on the desk, and then the student, I see who that person is, and I can call on them, and it personalizes the class a little bit more. Then what I can do is at the end of class, pick up all these cards, and I have 2 piles. I have the piles of all the yeses who were there and the piles of all the nos. And then I go back to my grade book where I'm tracking attendance or participation, and I just simply take the cards and translate that to the grade book. So it's pretty easy to do. The other thing you can do is a sign-in sheet. I've used this in the past for some of my classes, and actually with this, the sign-in sheet would involve that you would actually send this around the class and the students would sign in. Let me give you a warning on this. I discovered recently when I was doing this that some students were signing in for their friends. So I've since switched to little sheets of paper that are both attendance sheets, and only 1 student per class gets it. I ask for it at the end of class, thus assuring that the students stay for the whole class. And I also have a little writing exercise on there as well. So it actually fulfills a number of things I'm trying to do in the class. If you send around an attendance sheet, students may sign in for their friends, and thus it's not authentically reflecting who is in the class or not. The other thing you can do is a roll call. So you would have this sheet here, and then you would just go around and do this. When I first started teaching in the 90s, the mid-90s, that was the method I used. I found that it just took more time to do it. Sometimes I would get embarrassed if I mispronounced the student's name or not. They could correct me, of course. But it just took almost 5 to 10 minutes, and then if students came in late, it was an issue. So I find the cards or something like a card to be the best bet for me, but use the approach or technique that works for you the best. Now, I want to offer that if you're doing Canvas enhancement, whether you're teaching a face-to-face, if you're teaching DE, you're not taking roll per se, but you're probably doing participation through discussions. But for a face-to-face class that is Canvas enhanced, there are some great tools that we can look at here in Canvas to track both attendance and participation. So let's take a look. Okay, so I'm actually pulling up the Promise sandbox here for one of my Promise classes. Because of FERPA, I'm not going to show you an actual class with student names. But what you would do is click on your attendance tab. And then this, I think, is pretty nice for a face-to-face class. This doesn't make sense for DE because of obvious reasons, as you'll see here. So what we would normally do is see a list of students here, and then I could actually then drag students onto the grid, and that could be based on where students are seated. So if I had, like in this classroom, a seat of 4 students across a row, I could put those students there. Again, I could kind of do this as they come in using the cards, or I could actually do it after the fact just based on maybe where they typically sit. It's kind of up to you. The other thing you can do is click on Take Attendance, and then again, it's not going to show, but you can just hit mark all present or unmark all, and then it's very easy to do. I recommend you do that when you do your roll call. I will take all my student names. I'll start with mark all present, and those are all greened, and then I go in and do the red. So I click on there and X if the student wasn't there. There's also an option for students leaving late. I recommend with your cards as well, if you like, you could have a third pile. So pile of present, absent, and late or came late. If you do percentage points or like half of 10 points if they leave early or come late or something like that. So Canvas is super useful for this feature. You can also do it in the gradebook through the college, through your passport system. Either way allows you to take attendance, and it's just a handy opportunity to use some of the technology available. And let me talk a little bit about participation. So participation is a little trickier than attendance. Attendance means the students are here or not. Hopefully you want them to participate. They do participate if that's part of your class. If you're doing participation, I did this very early in my career and actually changed some approaches because I was asked to teach a seminar class, and I thought a seminar was going to mean like 15, 20 students. It actually had close to 80 students. And I had participation built into the syllabus going into it, and then I discovered, lo and behold, that I was going to have like 80 students. So I came up with a system. I would ask for students' names. I would, put a plus or a minus or a check based on their level of participation for that class. It was kind of a nightmare though. I had it as a requirement, and what would happen is some students, were like, oh man, I got to get my point in early, so 30 hands would shoot up and you're trying to call on everybody. It was just a bit of a nightmare in the classroom trying to manage all that. So I've since moved away from that kind of participation approach. If you require that, just make sure, as I say here, all students will have the opportunity to get the participation points. So you have to build that in. What the law says is that if you're teaching a class, every student, regardless of disability, accommodation, as long as they attend and they're active, they have the right to get points in that class. So you just have to make sure you build that in. Secondly, perhaps create a system to allow equal participation across the class. One of the things I don't like about class participation is sometimes one or more students will dominate and other students are more reserved and shy and don't speak up as much. It's really a challenge because not everyone is an extrovert, and that's perfectly fine. As a result of it though, you have to think about, if you have that as a requirement in your class, how are you going to manage it? Because it does present both some logistic challenges and I think potentially some challenges with equity and fairness if you don't address them. In the case of hot topics, if you are doing participation, if you are teaching a class and a hot topic, a political topic comes up, just be ready to address inappropriate behavior, decorum issues appropriately as they arise, and check out some of my other videos on this very topic, because participation can also lead to scenarios where students say inappropriate things in a class. So good luck. Please reach out to me with any questions you might have about attendance and participation as you teach your face-to-face class here at Lake Tahoe Community College.